Today, I'll be talking about the price of zero transition. This is a way we can get to an abundance-centered society where at least the necessities of life are free to everyone on the planet. It's a transition approach whereby we are creating sustainable RBE aspiring communities that use automation and systems design to produce an abundance of goods and services, which they sell off for cheaper and cheaper prices whilst expanding and spreading, until eventually providing for everyone for free. But what are we transitioning from? I'll be brief on this. We're in a fiat-based fractional reserve lending system known as capitalism. But it's causing major problems and driving us towards environmental, energy, and economic crises. Many of these are being caused by deep systemic problems. For example, supply and demand, when you apply the profit motive, creates planned and perceived obsolescence. And the creation of such throwaway goods and services has major environmental impacts. You've also got interest rates and inflation, which causes increased income inequality and leads to human suffering. In the words of the late Jacques Fresco, this shit's got to go. We need to change, but what do we transition to? Thankfully, there's a number of alternative economic systems. You've got true cost economics, which values human well-being and the environment. There's steady state economics, which helps us live within the carrying capacity of the earth. And there's participatory economics. PairCon understands that there's an issue with voting for people to represent you, if they're meant to work in their own self-interests. At the heart of PairCon, those most affected by a decision are the ones with the most influence in the decision. Then there's the natural law, resource-based economy, which is a post-scarcity society based on the application of the scientific method to social concerns. It also incorporates access over ownership and the use of automation and systems design to provide abundance. As you can see, the current best post-scarcity option is to transition towards an RBE. If this is a journey, then that's our target. It's a combination of science, technology, and a mindset change, which helps us reduce scarcity, waste, and violence towards zero. In knowing the capitalist system, we can predict three main ways that it can collapse. There's the price of infinity collapse, which is really just business as usual. This is where the issues with capitalism means that nearly everything costs so much you can't afford it. It may as well cost an infinite amount. The Phoenix model is the price of infinity, but somehow, as the monetary system is collapsing, we transition to an RBE. Despite there not really being any internet, hell, barely enough food and water to survive. Yet this is the transition model I heard being advocated a lot when I first joined the Zeitgeist movement. The thinking behind this seems to be that no one will change to a new system if they're happy where they are. The transition is like being asked to cross a plank going from the roof of one building to another. That's dangerous. Not that many people are going to do it. However, if the building is on fire, you bet your ass you will. You'll walk, crawl, do whatever you can to get away from that burning building, just like you get away from the crumbling capitalist system. But the trick is to put the plank on the ground and make the trip easy and fun. We want it to be a better life for people who join us in the RBE. Thankfully, there's a third option, the price of zero. In a way, this is where we beat capitalism its own game, and we get to transition to a future where at least the necessities of life are free to everyone on the planet. I'm talking food, water, electricity, transport, education, entertainment, health, and more. But it's beyond that. The end game is to create such long-term abundance that there's no longer a need for money, so a transition away from capitalism. The price of zero is also based on the Buckminster Fuller idea that you never change things by fighting the existing reality. To change something, build a new model which makes the existing model obsolete. So which is the best transition approach? Well, the price of zero is obviously, as we can start it today and we're heading towards the end goal. You can't build a global resource-based economy instantly. But we can start small and expand. Like planting seeds all over the place. We would want a dozen or so RBE aspiring communities, which can develop into towns, cities, and beyond. Now, not all will succeed, but we can learn from those that fail. Through systems-based thinking, plus automation, they'll be creating an excess of goods and services which can be sold off to the surrounding monetary system for cheaper and cheaper prices. At the same time, allowing the communities to expand, converting our current monetary system into an RBE over time. Just like it takes years for a tree to bear fruit, it could take 10 or so years to go from a tribe of under 150 people to a city of tens of thousands that's capable of producing a substantial amount of abundance. I mentioned 150 people as that's Dunbar's number, beyond which you can't really know everyone in the group. Adding more people means changing from a connected tribe to a large community. In the process, we're requiring more complex governance structures, plus tools for management and trust. Thus, it's an important milestone. After the cities grow and the ideas spreads, we'll have to start worrying about crossing the chasm. During the adoption of new disruptive trends, different stages of the uptake are done by different groups of people. At the start, the RBE concept is being developed by ourselves, the innovators and early adopters. We can see the potential and are willing to work on making it a reality. Then there's the chasm. This is where a lot of ideas and trends die out. They don't become mainstream if they don't cross the chasm. Crossing the chasm often requires a combination of providing value as well as a new set of marketing designed to attract the pragmatists. These are the people who will join the RBE because it provides a tangible benefit, a better life for them than they currently have. They're likely to be people who have a dream of something they want to do, but are limited by capitalism. After the pragmatists join, the late majority will often tag along because it's what everyone else is doing. Whilst the laggards are those still trying to use a rotary phone until they no longer work. Then there's the Luddites, that small percentage of people who will actively try to suppress or attack the adoption of a resource-based economy. The Luddites are the main reason why we need to defend our cities, ourselves, and the core RBE concepts. In saying that, we should treat violence like a contagious disease. We don't want to inflict it or spread it. When creating the RBE-like cities, they should be adapted to their local environment and resources. Trying to live in the desert? Build a long, thin city in the sand dunes. Living in Bali? You might want to build with bamboo. You might also want to take a look at earthship houses, tiny houses, permaculture techniques, or Venus Project-style circular cities. There's a lot of great work that's already been done in this area, but not enough of it has had automation and a global systems design perspective applied. Because the RBE is a post-scarcity, post-monetary society, there's not just technical changes, but large mindset changes as well. A big focus will be on responsibility for the systems that support us, the technical systems, social systems, and ecosystem. With this comes a change in idea of ownership. Now think about this. You go to the store and you buy an apple. But do you really own that apple? When you eat it, you use the life-supporting nutrients, which then get passed through into the ecosystem, and it's all interconnected. In an RBE, instead of paying money, you would instead have some responsibility to the tree that bore the fruit and the people and machines who helped tend the orchard and the ecosystem that supports it. This makes us all responsible for the systems that support us, not just the environment, but the technical and social systems as well. An important concept during infrastructure design is access abundance. An example is that not every house needs a vacuum cleaner. Take a set of 50 houses. Currently, each is likely to have 1 or 2 vacuum cleaners. Instead, you could have 2 industrial-grade, long-lasting robot vacuum cleaners that automatically service the houses. you're now using a 50th of the resources and increasing people's standard of living. Apply that thinking on a large scale to everything from kitchens to cars, and you've reduced a lot of the resource requirements, allowing more access abundance. The next level up from this is a full systems design. Why have robotic vacuum cleaners if you can have carpets that are hydrophobic and will ripple the dirt to the edges, thus being self-cleaning? Systems design thinking works best by zooming out your view on a problem until you see how the whole system works. And by applying first principles, you can think about how it should actually work. Some further examples are litter. Most people focus on ensuring they put their trash in the bin. But imagine, instead of garbage bins in the park, they have signs saying please litter here, because the packaging is bio-nutritional and good for the environment. Systems design also works hand in hand with automation. Look at supermarkets. Taking a basic automation approach at replacing checkout checks at the supermarket usually means you've got self-serve checkouts or RFID scanning. But by zooming your view out on the problem, you realize what you really want is food in your fridge and stuff in your cupboards. So imagine this. You're doing some cooking and you take some tomatoes out of the container. By the time you've chopped them up and put them in a pan, a new set of tomatoes has already been picked from the local vertical farm and delivered straight into your house and into the container. You now no longer have a need for supermarkets. That said, I might be completely wrong about everything. Failure is okay and expected. Failures provide an opportunity to develop better understandings and mental models. But you need to be willing to learn from mistakes and failures. The aviation industry is one such organization which does that. They have black box flight recorders so that if something goes wrong, they can investigate and learn from the problems. We should learn from them and be open and transparent, recording everything we can, from meetings and decisions to measurements and the outcome of what's been done. Whenever there's an issue, we can then do a 5 whys analysis, asking why a problem occurred. You then ask, well, why was that allowed to happen? And you keep asking why until you get to the core problem. You then work on fixes for each level of why. There's lots of other techniques like randomized controlled trials, A/B testing, and we're going to have to be dealing with the cultural issues of blame and failure. But learning from failures and near misses is probably the most important part of my talk, as I can be wrong about nearly everything else, but with the right approach, we can discover the best solutions. This is also the core of what the Zeitgeist movement advocates, the application of the scientific method to social concerns. For the continued creation of new communities, we're going to need some starting resources. A great method for this is the revolving funding model. You get people to donate towards a pool of money and resources. This is used to create the first RBE aspiring communities. As those communities develop, they pay back the interest-free loan, which can be used to kickstart new communities and fund larger projects. I've been a part of a community in Australia called Carina, who's applied this thinking to solar PV installations. And we've funded 14 projects so far. If someone put in money at the start to buy a solar PV panel, then that money has already gone on to fund multiple panels in other projects. For those that are interested in the idea, a cryptocurrency smart contract could be a great mechanism for orchestrating this. Of course, the aim is to not need the fund in the future. The great news is that there's at least half a dozen RBE aspiring communities, such as the Koto Co-op, which aims to start in Finland, or Asympac, which is aiming to run more like a corporation, and the One Small Town project, which Michael Tellinger has been raising funds for in the United States. In Queensland, there's the RBE 10K project, which Ziggy has been running. But the most successful has been the Katagaya project in Peru, which has been running for a number of years. And the last being Earth Communities, which was a decentralized RBE-like community started in my hometown of Adelaide, South Australia. Now, the Live to Give model was inspiring, and we had some passionate people involved, and over $100,000 of investment. Unfortunately, it failed for one main reason. It tried to grow too quickly and purchased an organic food shop, which had over $80,000 in debt. When you do a 5 whys analysis, you find that due diligence wasn't completed correctly, and the debt wasn't known about. The decision was made with good intentions, but it was rushed and mostly based on emotions. It was allowed to be rushed because those doing the resource management and financial accounting weren't consulted. In fact, the decision was made by a small number of founders, not by the 20 plus members, staff and investors. As such, it was a decision partly forced upon people. Now, this all highlights how important it is to use the correct decision-making processes. I suggest trying to identify decisions which are important and lasting and ensure they're made with quality and consensus, so people have buy-in, but also a discussion can happen and better decisions are made. One of the issues with running an RBE aspiring community is that you'll be limited to what the government requirements are. From building codes to the use of money and paying of taxes, it'll likely help if you can convert the land into a micronation so it's considered its own country. There's 12 micronations in Europe and 79 around the world. Now, not all are active or officially recognized, as that's hard to pull off, but it's worth investigating. For those wanting to learn more, I highly recommend the book Black Box Thinking for more information, as it advocates applying the scientific method towards social concerns and gives some really great examples. It's a must-read. The Knowledge, How to Rebuild Our World After an Apocalypse, is actually a really great perspective on starting a community from scratch and can be easily applied to RBE aspiring communities. Crossing the Chasm is more useful for people interested in the marketing side of things, although I suggest you also research Disruptive Innovation by Clayton Christensen. You likely have a number of questions and want every step of the transition explained in great detail. Unfortunately, this is a long journey without a good map. Now, we know the direction to head, but there's a fog of war there, which means that we can only see a few steps ahead of us, not all 100,000 steps. Thankfully, as we walk along, like in computer games, we can then see the next few steps ahead of us and, in an iterative process, make our way towards a far more abundant, thriving, and sustainable future. Thank you.